Today, I'm excited to talk with everyone about why jobs to be done is foundational to digital marketing. And this is a theory that I talk quite a bit about in my book, Principles of Marketing for a Digital Age, which is published by Sage Publications. So we're in a really exciting time when it comes to digital marketing. According to a study by McKinsey, the pandemic accelerated adoption of digital technologies by 10 years in a mere 3 months. We also have seen the penetration of e-commerce adoption increase from 37% of consumers to 48% using e-commerce technologies now. And 60% of companies report seeing new trends in buyer behaviors. One of the most critical trends that we've seen reported since the pandemic is brand switching behavior, with customers switching brands from brands they used to be loyal to trying new brands. That has more than doubled in the last year. Now, why has that doubled? Well, we could say that people switch brands when another brand offers them a better value. And in fact, that's what the study showed, that 65% reported switching brands because they got a better value from another brand. But value is the sum of consequences, including the detriments and the benefits. So it's the whole of the experience that a customer has with a brand. That means there are a lot of different areas that we can focus on to be able to improve the value that we're offering and hopefully be able to retain more customers and protect against that brand switching behavior. Industry 4.0 enables companies to capture and process data and use it to anticipate behavior and trigger marketing cues, but it is limited in its ability to understand needs. And this is really important because 66% of customers report that they expect companies to understand their unique needs and expectations. Instead, what we have happen is a reliance on behavioral data as people click through the internet and visit our websites. And we use that behavioral data, the customer interactions and the touch points, and we benefit from machine learning and artificial intelligence as companies turn to intelligent automation. But these tools are limited in terms of their ability to really get at those underlying unique needs and expectations. In fact, what can happen when we rely too heavily on this type of digital behavioral data is that we can end up in our own filter bubble. And I'm sure you've heard discussion of the extent to which we as individuals can experience filter bubbles because of the algorithms that control so much of what we see. But it can also happen to us as marketers in that we are limited by what is unknown when it comes to those needs and expectations of the target audience and what is outside our perceptual field as marketers. So we want to be able to protect against being in this kind of filter bubble by recognizing that the data points that we use for digital marketing are essentially just acting as proxies to what we really want to know. We see this in the prevalence of customer journey research and buyer personas. But these tools are only as good as the quality of the data that inform the tools. Journey and persona depictions should rely on strategic insight as to which variables to hone in on so as to focus on knowledge that can really drive robust marketing. And this is why I emphasize the jobs to be done theory in my book, Principles of Marketing for a Digital Age. The basics of jobs to be done is to recognize that customers are not buying a product, they are essentially hiring a product in order to get a job done. In other words, that product simply serves as a solution for them to get some utility accomplished. So using jobs to be done, we can better understand what are those core utilities that customers are seeking from the alternatives that exist in the market. We can also determine whether that need is underserved or overserved. And this is really important because it can speak directly to the strategy that our organizations can use in bringing offers to market. If a segment is underserved, this means that currently no offer in the market is fully meeting the jobs that they have to be done. There's an opportunity or a gap that exists, and if our organization could design an offer that would meet these needs, we'd be able to differentiate the organization from the competition and capture that market, even possibly at a price premium. We also want to understand when there are segments that are overserved in terms of the jobs that they seek to have done. And this is because overserved customers can feel something called feature fatigue. This exists whenever we add features to products in order to try to continue to improve or to have planned obsolescence that will allow us to pursue a market penetration strategy. But research tells us that customers who experience feature fatigue also have lower satisfaction with the product that they purchase, and that can lead to brand switching behavior. So we also want to know who those overserved segments are in case we want to introduce a streamlined offer into the market that focuses specifically on the jobs to be done as opposed to just a host of utilities and features. To do this, we need to understand the different types of jobs to be done. As I mentioned, there's the core functional job, but there's also related jobs, emotional jobs, and consumption chain jobs. Related jobs are jobs related to receiving that core functional utility, the key thing that is motivating the drive towards that product at all. But we also have emotional jobs, which is essentially how people seek to feel when they are getting the job done. And then we have consumption chain jobs, which are the jobs that we have to do in order to complete those sales-related tasks or experience the actual product. And all of these feed into our work as digital marketers. I want to talk to you especially about the idea of these emotional jobs and emotional utility. And this is because we've seen an emphasis in recent days on the idea of brand purpose, with people commenting that brand purpose is more important than ever. In fact, 69% of people believe brands should contribute to society, and 83% of millennials feel this way. Also, in the study that showed that brand switching was twice the rate that it used to be just a year ago, 44% of Gen Z and millennials reported that they switched brands because they were switching to a brand that had a better brand purpose, or a brand purpose that was more aligned with their specific values. And this speaks to an emotional job to be done. Brands have an opportunity to not only have a functional brand purpose in terms of getting the job done, but they can also fulfill an emotional purpose, a symbolic purpose, a societal purpose, and even a legacy level purpose. And this really represents an opportunity for brands, but only if we can understand those emotional jobs to be done so that we can design congruence between our target markets and our brand purpose. There's also another area of jobs to be done that is really relevant for digital marketers, and this is the consumption chain jobs. Salesforce found that 80% of customers believe the experience they have with a company is just as important as the product or service they buy. So just think how important this statistic is. 80% believe the experience is just as important as getting the core functional job done by buying a specific product or service. And this really speaks to consumption chain jobs, because it is through the consumption chain jobs that people go through the events or occurrences, or what we could call moments or episodes, through which they are able to gather information, receive a product, make a purchase, go through an installation, store, maintain, have something repaired, even dispose of a product afterwards. These are all consumption chain jobs that represent these occurrences or events in the relationship that customers have with us. So we can look at experience as that event or occurrence that leaves an impression on someone, And when it comes to customer experience management, what we're seeking is to generate a high level of positive sentiment about that experience so that that impression is a positive one throughout the journey or throughout the consumption chain jobs. And this relates especially to the process P in offer design. As marketers, it's not only about bringing a certain product or service to market, it's about the offer as a whole. And that can include the price, the marketing communications, the distribution, the service providers, the tangible evidence that we provide, as well as processes. And it is these processes where digital marketing can really pay off because it can help us to create frictionless experiences that are likely to have positive sentiment, but only to the extent that we can understand what these processes should accomplish in terms of the definition of what job the customer needs to have done per the consumption chain approach. Customer experience also relates back to those emotional jobs to be done. And this is because increasingly customers are telling us that they expect organizations to demonstrate empathy. Empathy is defined as the act of understanding, being aware of, or being sensitive to customer emotions. And a recent poll found that 9 in 10 consumers want brands to show empathy. And 86% said showing empathy is critical to fostering loyalty, which can help minimize those brand switching behaviors that we talked about earlier. Now, we've long known that empathy is an important component in understanding how people judge the quality of a customer experience. It is one of 5 components, including reliability, responsiveness, assurance, and tangible evidence. But previously, empathy was only 16% of the impact on perceived quality of an experience. And now research is suggesting that people are expecting much more empathy. This means that organizations have to understand what are these emotional jobs to be done if they are to begin to behave with empathic responses that demonstrate an understanding of these emotional jobs for the target market. Adobe's 2021 Digital Trends Report says that this year the marketing battleground will be based on speed and agility. And that speaks to the idea of responsiveness and reliability, which certainly digital marketing and MarTech allows us to accomplish. But we've seen through this presentation that digital marketing really needs to have an understanding of jobs to be done so that we can design products that will meet the needs of underserved markets, better design products for overserved markets, and create better processes and be able to demonstrate empathy throughout the customer experience. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. You know, I can't help but realize as I'm listening to you, what an exciting time it is to be a marketer, with so many different tools and technologies, and changing buyer behaviors and ways to communicate with our customers. But a challenging, but also very exciting time to be a marketer. I feel, me being a marketer myself, I feel like the level of importance within the organization only continues to increase as we have more variables. So I'd like to bring on our other panelist, founder and CEO of Stratagen, Jobs to Be Done pioneer, Tony Alwick. As we pivot to this Q&A session, I encourage you to put your questions in the chat. I'll be going through and cataloging them, and then in the final portion of today's event, we'll make sure we get your questions answered. So thank you. And Tony, take it away.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Dr. Tracy, for being here. I certainly appreciate it. You know, Tracy, as you were talking through this, you know, what occurs to me is that you're applying jobs to be done thinking to marketing and show how a deep understanding of customer needs really is essential in order to market correctly or effectively, I should say. But as we were talking about this, I see a strategy story here too. It reminded me of going back to Michael Porter's thinking that what we're trying to do is we're trying to occupy a unique and valued competitive position. And unique in the sense that nobody else is there, and valued in the sense that it's underserved, like you said, or overserved. And you have a choice of targeting that. You got to find it. You got to claim that position. You got to secure that position. And it sounds like it's the same kind of scenario, right? The same kind of actions are required. You have to know where the customer's underserved and be able to satisfy them. And then you have to have a value proposition and messaging and marketing that really goes deep to resonating with them. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think you summarized it perfectly. And those are the basics that absolutely is the basics of marketing, acquisition, and retention of customers. But it's something that I think as digital marketers, we tend to get caught up in the tactics that we're utilizing. And sometimes we forget some of those basics.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned that, a lot of this is dependent on understanding the customer's needs, which of course, this is basic marketing 101, right? We're all taught that people have unmet needs and there's segments of people with different unmet needs. But, as we've learned in our work, most companies, there isn't agreement as to what a customer need even is. So, we're trying to turn all science, we're trying to turn strategy and marketing and innovation into a science without the right input. So I'm kind of curious, when it comes to understanding customer needs, what do you see as being some of the biggest hurdles that stand in the way of making this effective?
I see the biggest hurdle really is that we're using variables as proxies rather than actually doing the research on what the needs are, where we might be developing segmentation analyses, utilizing demographic variables and psychographic variables, behavioral variables, of course, very common for digital marketers, but those are only proxies for really understanding the utility and the benefits that customers are seeking. We're making assumptions with those variables. And as we all know, it's very dangerous to make assumptions.
Well, it certainly is. So would you recommend that there be a greater focus on understanding what a customer need actually is? Like, there's not much science associated with this, really, right? This is where we've been focusing for years. People buy products to get a job done. Okay, well, so let's figure out how they measure success when getting a job done. And those metrics can then be used to figure out how to help them get a job done better. It makes sense that those are, it's not a proxy for customer needs. They actually are the customer's needs if you look through that jobs to be done lens. Do you see that as being an important part of the future of marketing?
Absolutely. I see that really as the holy grail for segmentation and targeting, as well as the key to the design to value principle, which is very complementary to jobs to be done. That is a principle that says that what we should do when we're designing offers is to design in value as defined by the target market, so that we identify places to add value or even reduce value in terms of overserved markets, so that we can design to lower costs, and possibly offer a lower price. So whether we're designing to value the offer or segmenting and targeting jobs to be done and really understanding what those core needs are is really critical.
It goes back to finding that unique and valued competitive position. It's like you're forced to pick something, and then you have to be really good at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be good at it,
you
got to deliver. So we have to understand what that is. Well, I really appreciate the work that you've done in your book and making jobs to be done in outcome-driven innovation prominent in the book itself. How did you first come across these concepts, and why do you believe they play such an important role in the future of marketing?
Well, I read an article that you wrote, Tony, so I read it, saw the absolute value and the principles that you were advocating for, and I just became a fan. Then over time, I recognized that jobs to be done is really not represented in the marketing textbooks that students are learning from as they go through developing, getting their marketing degrees. And so it was a mission of mine kind of to make sure that in my textbook that jobs to be done was featured, because I see it as so valuable for marketing success.
So what do you think, what problems does jobs to be done solve for the marketer?
Well, like I said, it is the key to offer design, to make sure that the utilities are there, and it can be minor needs that are being met better or being served that weren't being served before. It's not always the core utility that is being designed into that offer. Maybe that was already handled, but there can be something unique that truly differentiates and is relevant to that target audience. It kind of goes back to that notion of positioning, that we're trying to be able to have something that's relevant to the target market that we can also own and make ours.
Well, in your book, I found it interesting that you're grounding the marketing aspect of the book in the digital age. So why do you think it's important to ground it in the digital age as opposed to just like marketing in general?
Well, today all marketing is digital marketing. We really can't escape that. And Industry 4.0 was a term that was really coined for the manufacturing world, but we have seen Industry 4.0 start to affect us as marketers in all areas, whether it's big data, algorithms, machine learning, artificial intelligence, cognitive technologies, and so on. All of those technologies are really infiltrating marketing. That's why I like to say now that we're in the era of marketing convergence. And instead of some of the past errors like societal marketing that we used to be in, to recognize this impact of digital technology on marketing.
Even in our firm, we use digital marketing techniques, of course, and what we see, like just an observation, is that marketing and sales are blurring. Like we're running. A lot of the sales activity is actually taking place as part of the marketing process, if you will. So, many people come to us after they've already sold themselves, in effect, right? They've gone through the marketing process, and when it's time to sell, it's when it's time to buy, then they go to sell. Do you have any facts or figures on that, or just an opinion as to what's happening
we're seeing
there?
that more than ever before.
Yeah.
Research suggests that in B2B markets, 57% of buyers are completing the customer journey on their own before they ever talk to a salesperson. And that percentage is even higher when it comes to B2C target audiences. So people really are in a self-service mindset. They want to be able to get the job done on their own with the capabilities and processes that are made possible by the organization through digital marketing techniques.
Yeah. So it's almost as if there's two different, like if you apply jobs to be done just to marketing and a high level concept, you could look at a company and say, oh, my job to be done is make people aware of my product, right? But from a customer standpoint, they want to learn of tools that can help them get jobs done better in their lives. Right.
That's right. And they want to be able to evaluate those alternatives on their own, have the information that they need, and to some extent even train themselves, handle installation. Self-service has really become critical. And again, that's one of the reasons it's so important for us to understand consumption chain jobs so that we can design those processes to be frictionless and to maximize that customer experience.
You think a lot of this comes because people want a non-biased marketing experience?
That's interesting. The idea behind Google's ZMOT, Zero Moment of Truth, speaks to a tendency for people to rely upon third-party sources or friends and family, other colleagues for reviews and ratings as a source of information, as opposed to marketers as a source of information. But maybe it's up to us to provide more assurance and more trust and credibility so that the information we're providing in our content marketing strategies can still have the kind of influence that we want them to have.
Yeah, that makes great sense. So, Dr. Tuten, what do you believe are the biggest challenges that marketers are facing today?
Well, we're going to have a really big challenge coming up here soon with the end of cookies. But I actually see that as an opportunity instead of a challenge, because it means that we're going to have to return to first-party data as a key input into our analyses and into our marketing decision making. And that's an opportunity for jobs to be done to take on a bigger role and for us to recognize some of the value of primary research to guide our marketing decision making.
You talk about that too. Jobs to be done, in my view, is valuable because it can align the entire organization around a common target, if you will, helping the customer get a job done better. And, what we often see is that there isn't agreement on what needs are, which aren't met. And it's because of a solutions focus. Now, do you think that, in your experience, do you see an alignment taking place through this lens where marketing is creating messages that resonate with customers around outcomes that the development team is delivering on with products and services? How do you see this alignment taking place, or do you think companies will continue to operate in silos where marketing's focused on the job to be done, but development's focused on technology?
Well, I think one of the benefits of these digital technologies is that we are having the ability to break out of some of those silos. Operationally, we have more opportunity to communicate with those other parts of the organization more so than we really have in the past. So I think we'll have less of that silo type of decision making. But when it comes to that idea of the job to be done, I see organizations as being a little too simplistic in terms of what their value propositions are designed to do, because job statements can be very complex. There can be hundreds of jobs to be done that are associated with a single purchase decision. And so without understanding the complexity and the heterogeneity of target audiences, I think organizations can miss that.
Yeah, they certainly can. Well, it's helpful. So a couple of other questions we have. There's a lot of young marketers out there that maybe have only grown up in the digital age and they're early in their careers. What skills do you believe that they should be learning?
I want to really encourage any marketers who are fairly young in your career to emphasize learning about strategy. And that is because digital is so heavily influenced by tactical moves and by automation in our tech stacks. And ultimately, what we're doing really has to be strategic in nature. We need to use those models and theories to help guide our strategic decision making and be able to set those kinds of objectives for our organization. And strategy doesn't go away. Tactics will come and go. The different tools that we're using will evolve and change, and new technologies will come on the market. But that strategy is something that will always benefit all of the young career marketers out there.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, marketing has played an important role in the past, and of course the marketing aspects, but they also often have responsibility for product creation or product definition, and you're suggesting strategy as well. Who do you think is responsible for product and innovation and strategy to make it all come together? Because to me, it's all the same thing, right? Like you're trying to come up with a unique and valued position. Well, that's strategy. You have to find the position, which is market research. You have to claim it, which is value propositions and marketing. You have to secure it with your products. So who's responsible for this?
Well, it ultimately comes down to marketing, but most people who are avid marketers also recognize that marketing ought to be the central function of an organization. And especially for organizations that want to truly be perceived as customer-centric, marketing needs to be that premier functional strength that the organization has. So if the organization is a marketing organization first, then those kinds of things can happen much more easily and efficiently than if marketing is maybe set aside with sales or not viewed as a core function of the organization.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of times we see marketing aligned with the sales team, and they have a very solution-oriented mindset, and they confuse needs with solutions and that kind of thing, like we talked about.
Exactly.
And then other times you see marketing aligned with they call it upstream marketing, which is more about development, and they have their eyes and ears out to better understand customer needs. Do you see what's the evolution here? Is the marketing and sales mindset going to migrate to the marketing and development mindset? And are they going to adopt different thinking?
I think it depends on the organization's focus. Even though we're at a time where we say that we're focused on marketing with societal benefits and things like that, there are still a lot of companies out there that really are product or production oriented or sales oriented in terms of how they run that organization. So depending on the organization's mission, and it's interesting, you can take a look at a company's mission statement and pretty much tell whether it's really a customer-centric organization or whether it's production or sales focused. But I think depending on that organization's mission, we'll see either marketing rise into positions of leadership, where customer centricity can really be an objective, a vision for the organization versus those other types of organizations.
Yeah. Well, it's gotta be managed somewhere, right? Someone's got to be responsible for innovation. Because I often hear, who's responsible for innovation? And say, well, everybody is. Well, if everybody is, obviously nobody is. So we have to take care of that issue.
Exactly.
Another interesting thing I found in your presentation is that you called out every aspect of the jobs to be done. 3 types of jobs: the emotional jobs, the functional jobs, the consumption chain jobs. In our experience, yes, they're all important. Are you suggesting that in every case they should all be looked at so that it's optimized along all 3 of those dimensions?
I believe so. I would look at it holistically as a framework that can help guide all of those offer design components. I'm especially concerned about consumption chain jobs because these processes, as digital customers are so self-service oriented, the processes that they're going through in order to complete sales related tasks or product receipt, product disposal, and so on, all of those consumption chain jobs they're trying to do on their own without necessarily having the facilitation of, say, a service provider from that organization take place. Things have become so automated. So I think really understanding what are the jobs to be done from a process perspective is really critical for us to be able to develop these positive customer experiences. Bain and Company calls it episode mapping. And I tend to think of them as episodes or as micro moments as the customers are trying to get these consumption chain jobs taken care of.
And you couple that with the emotional aspects and the functional aspects, and that's the complete package. As you're stating different statistics, it doesn't sound like one's necessarily more important than another to a great degree, but it sounds like the functional aspects are critical, because if you're not delivering function, then there's nothing to make people aware of and help them buy, right? But given that you've done that, what would you say is the next most important aspect? Like for people trying to prioritize the marketing efforts, should they focus on function first, then emotion, or then consumption? Do you have a prioritization?
I think a big challenge for us is this empathy piece of the puzzle, which relates to those emotional jobs. With so many people saying that having an organization demonstrate empathy towards them, how in the world are organizations going to do that? How are we going to demonstrate to target audiences that we understand how they feel and that we get their unique feelings? Because part of it is that idea that their feelings are individualized and personalized. So this isn't about just being able to have automation that calls someone by their first name or remembers that their last purchase was, a certain product that might go with this product. It's going to be much more difficult for us to be able to grasp how do we show empathy.
That's interesting. So in any other ways, do you think marketers need to evolve their mindset and how to think about digital marketing as it relates to jobs thinking?
Well, some of it might be just doing things well all the time, that idea of having the frictionless experience. Like research shows that Amazon consistently is rated as one of the best companies in terms of customer service. But in fact, we hardly ever receive service from Amazon because things are usually right. It's almost like the absence of customer service has created this satisfaction with it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because we often suggest to our clients that you want to eliminate all the consumption jobs. Like you don't want to have make the product so it's not. You don't have to dispose of it. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to repair it or upgrade it or store it or transport it.
That's great advice.
Right. So if you can eliminate it, then that's one issue. Because people aren't buying products so they can transport them, store them, and maintain them. Right. They're buying them so they can address a core functional job or emotional job. John, I see that you've popped back on. I think that's a hint that you want to take this to Q&A. Is that correct?
I have. Thank you. Wonderful conversation and dialogue. So I want to give time and opportunity. We have many questions that have come in during your dialogue, and I want to try to answer them for some of our individuals. One question that I'm seeing a couple different forms. One of them from Subash Franklin. This is to both of you. The pandemic has caused a lot of changes in how we market and develop our products and the various needs of our customers. Do you believe there's any change in the process to either product development or marketing because of the pandemic? And if so, what might those changes be?
You see first.
I think organizations are still figuring this out, but obviously I'm advocating for a change because we've really gotten away from primary research that studies the customer, and we've been relying on this residual data that comes in as a result of people's online behaviors. And again, using that in lieu of some of that primary research. So I would say that marketing should change so that it can be able to have better design decisions throughout its digital marketing efforts. And if we fail to do this, it's almost like the idea of fail faster, except it's not positive. Or usually in leadership groups, they say fail faster as a positive growth sort of initiative. Well, we don't want that in digital marketing, but that's what could happen.
That's really funny. That's exactly right. Why fail fast when you could attempt to avoid failure in the first place, right? And how do you do that? Well, you have to have a more effective way to understand customers' needs and which are unmet, and be able to do that faster and sooner rather than later. John, to your point, I think that's really one of the key modifications companies need to make to their processes. They can't wait 6 months or a year to do their research and do their analysis to figure out, have things changed. You have to be able to understand customer needs very quickly and get a grasp around which ones are unmet, how that's changed. That can be done in weeks and, with the right processes. So I think adopting tools like that is critically important. It certainly has been for a lot of our clients over the past year.
Definitely. Thank you for that. So this question comes in from Andrew Sweeney. Any advice for how to introduce jobs to be done into a marketing organization? And he had some clarification there. How to introduce something with not being perceived as, hey, you're doing this wrong, you should do it this way. Any advice as to, and I think this advice comes to, if you're trying to introduce any concept, but how do you introduce jobs to be done into a marketing organization or product organization? Tony, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's a great one for Tony.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. It's not easy, right? Because there's what it requires is a mindset shift. That's really what it is. Most companies are technology oriented, solution oriented, ideas first oriented. It's been the way it is forever, right? Most of the processes that you see laid out for innovation begin with ideas. It's just been proliferating for decades, basically. So I think to introduce this, it requires a mindset shift, And it's just being able to tell the story through a jobs to be done lens, so people can see the difference between the quarter-inch drill and the quarter-inch hole, if you will. Are we in the drill market? Are all our competitors other drill makers? Are people trying to buy drills? Or are you looking at through the hole maker's lens, where you realize people are trying to create quarter-inch holes? There's a lot of competing products. They don't care if it's a drill. They just want to get the job done faster, more efficiently, cheaper, right? I think once you introduce that mindset into the organization, you develop champions that begin moving that message forward. Just like Dr. Tuten here is, that's her goal, right? She's trying to take this mindset, push it forward, showing how people can be more effective at using this lens when you apply it to marketing or strategy or product development.
And I draw back onto when I was first introduced to jobs to be done. I was working for one of the large telecommunications companies, and the way I introduced it was simply asking questions. Right? We were, as a lot of telecoms are, we're anchored to our technology and our alphabet soup acronyms, our old ways of thinking, and I kept on asking the question of, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? What is the job that we're trying to solve? What is the goal of the customer? And framing the questions in that lens, I was able to win over various people in the organization. And once people in the organization started to ask those questions, then it became, an easy transition to say, well, this is part of a larger framework, a larger perspective. As Tony said, it's a mindset shift, right? Instead of thinking of your customers as anchored towards a technology, you think about your customers as trying to solve a problem. And I think if there's any advice from somebody who's been in your shoes, Andrew, that was really the way I handled it. There's a few questions in here around the difference between, or the importance of emotional jobs and for functional jobs in marketing. I'll serve this one up to both of you. How do you see the relationship between them? Do you see one as more important for marketers, or do they work together as both carrying equal importance?
Well, I'd say we have to have the core functional utility, that the job has to be met at least at some level. Although we recognize that in underserved markets, there are some unmet needs that are occurring, and that's very valuable for us to identify, because we know from Abraham Maslow that unmet needs are the only ones that truly motivate or drive behavior. So we want to be able to have that. But I think we can't forget about the emotional jobs or say that they're somehow secondary, because that's how people want to feel when they are getting that core functional job done. And we saw from the stats that I reported in my presentation that the experience is for 80% just as important as the core product. And that experience is something that is emotional.
Yeah, we see that too, Tracy. The same exact thing. And I agree. We have to have the function. In fact, in a lot of cases, what we do is we'll look at the unmet needs, and then we work with the organization to figure out, well, which unmet needs can they address? So there may be 20 unmet needs, and maybe in the next iteration of their product, they'll address 5 or 7 of them. And then what we would love to do is run a correlation analysis between those needs and the emotional jobs in our surveys. And we can figure out which emotional jobs connect with the needs that you're satisfying, so that you can quite literally correlate the emotional message with the functional benefits that you bring the customer. We find that to be a really effective approach to marketing.
That sounds really powerful.
Another one. So this one comes from James O'Connor. So the lean startup relies on customer discovery, design thinking on customer-centric interviews, and Jobs to be Done uses a Jobs to be Done interviews. These are all forms of primary qualitative research. Are they really just different twists on the same thing? I know this has been a question and a topic that we've discussed a lot in partnership with Agile and design thinking. I don't know, Tony, do you want to talk about, jobs to be done, how it's different and how it actually
Sure.
enhances those processes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, they're two different tools for two different jobs. And there's the innovation process, which comes before the development process. And the innovation process should result in a product concept that you know is going to win in the marketplace before you even start developing it. Right? How do you know it's going to win? Because you know it's going to satisfy the top 10 unmet needs that you've determined and prioritized through the research. Right? So the goal of the jobs to be done research is to conceptualize a winning product before you start developing it. Right? So that's its purpose. Then once it goes into development, begin using the design thinking tools, just like you have been over the years, to help, especially with the consumption elements, right? To make sure you're testing it and iterating on how to install it, how to set it up, how to interface with it, how to maintain it. So go through that. That's all product design. But what's different is the function of the product is fixed up front through jobs to be done research. You're not iterating on what the product does while you're creating the product in development. That's, to me, the key difference between the two. Another way to look at it is jobs to be done up front is going to cut down on the number of iterations in development. Because, again, you're not guessing as to what the product's supposed to do. That's fixed. That's fixed in the equation. Now you're just trying to figure out how to get, how to put those functions in there the most effective way.
Excellent. Were you going to say something else, Tracy?
Tracy, do you have anything to add to that?
I thought that was perfect. So often in marketing courses, we end up teaching so many different models and frameworks, and students will be confused by the number that they have to choose from. And I always say each model or framework is designed for a specific purpose. As long as you do that, you'll know exactly which model to use at which time, and that's what you just explained.
So, Dr. Tuten, this one I think is going to be for you. This comes from Maryland. With the new platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we now have tools where we can do various social listening forms of research. How might individuals who are using those social listening tools leverage jobs to be done?
I'm a big fan of social listening tools. I think we can learn a lot from monitoring social media comments and text analyzing the content that exists in those social media comments related to, whether it's a purchase context or a specific brand or a market where we're dealing with different competitors. We can absolutely learn a lot. The issue is that social listening is based on the comments that people are contributing sort of free form, and they can only contribute that which is in their perceptual field. And a lot of times when we have an innovation in marketing, it's something that people hadn't thought of before. It never occurred to them that they could have that job met in a specific way because no one had asked them that or placed that idea within their perceptual field. So we have to recognize that social listening data is minimized by that or limited by that component. Whereas with the jobs to be done research, we'd be able to ask the right questions to be able to dive into what are the core needs, what are the emotional jobs to be done, and what are the outcomes that are being sought as a result of getting those jobs done.
Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I thought that was really good because I hear what Tracy's saying is that in essence, if you just let people talk on social media about whatever they want to talk about, they're going to talk about solutions generally, and of course, solutions are not needs. Solutions satisfy needs. And just like most companies can't agree on what a need is, well, most consumers, of course, don't know what input is required to help a company make an effective product. So if they don't know that, the chance of getting the input directly from them through social media is going to be pretty slim. You might be able to get something, but Tracy, as you said, the best thing to do is just go talk to customers who are trying to get the job done and figure out, what that job is and how they measure success on each step of the way. It's much more direct.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for the lively dialogue today.